So I've made my video ranking the animated feature Oscar wins of the 2010s. Now it's time for my list of the top 10 Oscar nominations for Best Animated Feature that decade. What did I love in animated feature? What should have won over potentially some other films that took the gold trophy? And also at the end of this video, I will give you what I think was the worst Oscar nomination that decade for animated feature. Are you ready? Here we go. Number 10, Frankenweenie.
Actually, I have a question.
That is why you are scientist.
So even though the guy has definitely made some clunkers throughout the years, I will always be a fan of Tim Burton. I will always await his next film with anticipation. One of my early favorites of his is his short live-action film Frankenweenie from the early 1980s. It has such a beautiful, whimsical quality. It's so very Tim Burton. So I was thrilled when I heard he was turning his short film into a feature animated movie. Honestly, Frankenweenie from 2012 is probably the best movie Tim Burton has made since the end of the 1990s. The story is richer, he gave all the characters more emotional weight, and that black and white animation is just gorgeous and stunning to look at. Brave, which won the Oscar that year for animated feature, is fine, but it hurts my heart a little bit that one other movie, I'm going to talk about here soon, and Frankenweenie did not take it instead. Number 9, How to Train Your Dragon.
It's not so much what you look like, it's what's inside that he can't stand.
Thank you for summing that up.
So all three of the theatrical How to Train Your Dragon movies got in at the Oscars. It does kind of surprise me in a way that none of the three films won in this category. Part 3 was very beloved, as was Part 2, and the first one, How to Train Your Dragon from 2010, is just a sublime piece of family entertainment that just happened to come out in the wrong year. 2010 was the year of Toy Story 3, and nothing was beating that for animated feature. I mean, it got into Best Picture. Now, Rango wins an animated feature the following year, and I very much believe if How to Train Your Dragon had come out in 2011 instead of 2010, it would have won the Best Animated Feature Oscar, hands down. Like, Rango is amusing, but How to Train Your Dragon is a better film, and it's definitely had more lasting impact on its audience. Number 8, Moana.
Just pick an eye, babe. I can't concentrate on what I'm saying if you keep... Yeah, pick one. Pick one.
If you can believe it, this is the only traditional Disney film in this entire top 10 list. I'm talking both Disney and Pixar. As much as I enjoyed The Incredibles 2 from 2018, that's not on the list. Neither is Wreck-It Ralph from 2012, which is a lot of fun. I would have that at number 11 or number 12, but it's not here. I do think the one great Disney animated movie that got nominated at the Oscars but didn't win was Moana from 2016. I have seen this movie a bunch of times. It's so entertaining. The music is fantastic. The animation is sumptuous. The characters are believable and relatable. Moana is one of Disney's better efforts, I would say, of the last decade. It's definitely had more staying power than many of their other titles. I would go as far to suggest that Moana has had much more staying power than the winner of the Best Animated Feature Oscar that year, Zootopia, also from Disney. Number 7, When Marnie Was There.
Throw me the rope! Hurry! Rope? Quickly!
So there definitely seems to be some bias from Academy voters year to year at the Oscars as to what they choose for Best Animated Feature. I mean, you look back at the last 20 years, and most of the titles they choose are Disney films. Usually, these are great Disney films that deserve to win, films like WALL-E and Toy Story 3 and Inside Out. But when it comes to animation, there is such beautiful, original work coming from outside of Disney, coming from outside the United States. And the animated films from Japan year to year are always stunning, and one of their best from that decade was When Marnie Was There. It tells a very simple story, two young people becoming friends, but it just is so compelling all the way through. It's so beautifully done, you get so absorbed in the story that after a while, you kind of forget you're watching animation. Ultimately, when it comes to many animated titles from 2015, When Marnie Was There is the more impactful, challenging, interesting movie. Number 6, Isle of Dogs.
What was your favorite food?
Me? Oh, I don't care. Garbage, trash, scraps of rubbish. I'm used to leftovers.
So I am a huge Wes Anderson fan. I will follow him everywhere. I don't love everything he makes, but he has such an original voice that any new project he takes on is worth seeing. That definitely extends to his animated work. I love Fantastic Mr. Fox from 2009. It is just such a breath of fresh air. It's so funny. It's so imaginative. And then Isle of Dogs from 2018 blew my mind in the theater. It was such a wild ride. Gorgeous animation, wonderful voice acting. It's such a treat to see the vision of Wes Anderson in animated form. And I do think if Isle of Dogs had come out a year later, it probably beats Toy Story 4. But up against Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it didn't have much of a chance, sadly. Number 5, ParaNorman.
Is everyone okay?
No!
I love me a fun, spooky, animated romp, and ParaNorman from 2012 is one of the best in that genre. Like Nightmare Before Christmas from 1993 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and year to year I'm always up for another spooky animated film released around Halloween. We don't get them very often, but ParaNorman, oh my god, this was such a delight, so funny and fresh. I love the story, I love the characters, and I love that stop motion animation, which is just breathtaking in ParaNorman. And there's an LGBTQ character, like in an animated film for kids from 2012, that's pretty frickin' awesome. Again, like I talked about with Frankenweenie, it's a little absurd that both Frankenweenie and ParaNorman lost the Best Animated Feature Oscar to Brave. Really? Really? What happened there? Number 4, Anomalisa.
It's Mr. Stone. Michael Stone.
Really? Oh my god. Oh my god.
So this movie by the great Charlie Kaufman is a mini miracle. Like that it even got made, got financed, is kind of extraordinary. When you watch it, this is not an animated film for kids. This is not an animated film for any specific audience. It's just a really interesting, grounded, fascinating movie that happens to have stop motion animation. It's kind of a wonder to behold this very human story that could have been told through live action, but Charlie Kaufman does it with stop motion animation. It's so beautiful to look at. The voice acting is impeccable, especially from Jennifer Jason Leigh, who had an amazing 2015, by the way, with both this and The Hateful Eight, which got her a very well-deserved Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination. I love that Anomalisa also got into the Oscars in animated feature. It was never going to win over Inside Out, and it might not be a film for everyone. But for the adventurous viewer, if you have never seen Anomalisa, do yourself a favor and check it out. It is a treat. Number 3, The Wind Rises. So many would argue that every new film from Hayao Miyazaki should win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, He's so gifted, he's such an original, he takes his time with each new movie. Every single animated vision from this man has been astonishing, so it is a little surprising that he's only won the animated feature Oscar twice, first for Spirited Away, and then most recently, of course, for The Boy and the Heron. The Wind Rises from 2013 was his only feature film in the 2010s, and even though he went on to make The Boy and the Heron, The Wind Rises was promoted as his final film, his farewell feature of animation storytelling, and although it might not reach the heights of his very best work, The Wind Rises is still a gem. It's so lovely and specific, so personal to Hayao Miyazaki, such a unique slice-of-life story about an aeronautical engineer. It's kind of slow, it takes its time, but if you go with The Wind Rises, it just wraps you up in this beautiful narrative. And Frozen won the Oscar that year in Best Animated Feature over The Wind Rises. I mean, I get it. Frozen was a mammoth blockbuster hit for Disney, and it is a great movie, but The Wind Rises, that film, along with all the work of Hayao Miyazaki, is in a league of its own. Number 2, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. What a special movie this is. There really is nothing like The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which runs nearly 2.5 hours long. It's another animated film from Japan, Studio Ghibli, and it's just one of their finest efforts. It didn't make much of a splash in the United States. I mean, it did get the Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, but it never had a chance that season. I'm not sure if enough people sought this one out. It's not the easiest watch in the world. It's definitely not your typical family-friendly animated fare. This is that rare piece of animation that guts you. That by the end, if you are not crying, you are not a human being. Like, this is a heart-wrenching movie the way the best movies are and can be. It's quiet, thought-provoking, lyrical, so lovely to look at every step of the way. It was never going to beat Big Hero 6 for the Oscar, but boy, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, this is a masterful work of art. Now, before I get to my number one choice, just for fun, let me talk briefly about what I think was the worst Oscar nomination in animated feature of the 2010s. Honestly, of those 10 years, 10 ceremonies, there was only one giant turd that got into animated feature, and that's 2017's The Boss Baby.
What's all the racket?
Isn't he adorable?
Oh, I've got one for you too!
What?
Bummer.
Why did this silly, inane, subpar animated film get into the Oscars? It's kind of a mystery. I mean, I'm all for comedic animation being recognized, that's fine, but The Boss Baby? It's not very funny, it's not very clever, it's filled top to bottom with potty humor and lots of other things. Alec Baldwin's voice acting is questionable, and I know little kids really enjoyed this one, but Academy members looked at The Boss Baby and thought, yeah, Oscar nomination. Like, really? What the hell were they smoking? I mean, not to say that there was some amazing animated film that they snubbed so The Boss Baby could get in, but come on, I think the Lego Batman movie, also from 2017, would have been a much better and cooler Oscar nominee in this category than The Boss Baby. And finally, what do I think was the best film nominated in Best Animated Feature at the Oscars throughout all of the 2010s that did not win? This was a very easy call to make. My number one choice is Kubo and the Two Strings.
It's so lovely to meet you, Kubo. Face to face.
How did this movie not win the Oscar for Best Animated Feature of 2016? Like, Zootopia is a very good movie. It's entertaining, it's funny, but it's not Kubo and the Two Strings. This was easily one of the most dazzling and original animated creations of the decade. This movie has everything. It's funny, it's dramatic, it's action-packed, coming-of-age story, fantasy epic. It's got something for everybody in the audience, and there is not one false step in this narrative. The story is always captivating, the animation is spectacular and gorgeous to look at, and something really cool about this movie that merged stop-motion animation with 3D printing is that it got a second Oscar nomination that year for Best Visual Effects. Like, you don't see animated movies get into visual effects very often. I mean, it happened for Nightmare Before Christmas, and it happened here. Very well deserved. This is an outstanding movie, a wondrous vision, a total original in the history of animation, and over Zootopia? Hell yes. Kubo and the Two Strings should have won the Best Animated Feature Oscar.